Cam Akers' Achilles injury. We are here with the news. It feels like the NFL season is upon us because we have a changing landscape of player value. That and more this week on the Footballguys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, we got one of these dominoes falling. It was a backfield changing there with the Rams. What were your initial thoughts earlier today when the injury news came down?
I jinxed us. I was complaining that there's no news this week because it's pre-Olympics, post-Tour de France, pre-training camp. It's like the death of, the NBA Finals is on as we're recording this. It's like the death of sports this week. I jinxed us. That's totally my fault. I gave us news and didn't want it that we don't want. So it's a bummer because we're fans, right? I mean, we are fans of Cam Akers, and I don't know if I know anyone that's a bigger fan of Cam Akers back from his rookie days than you. So it's obviously disappointing. I mean, I think you have to make an analysis here on what you want to do with him going forward. The history on guys with Achilles aren't great. But a conversation you and I were having off air today, which is, hey, what we've seen other positions recover from this. We've seen other sports. Kevin Durant comes to mind, and that's a different body shape, a different set of movements. But, is this a scenario where he could potentially get back in a way that technology 10 years ago, some of the other players that we have with this at the running back position haven't been able to do? It's a really tough blow pre-training camp.
Yeah, and I think one thing working against Darrell Henderson in this capacity is the value of time that you have. So many weeks between now and week one. And let's face it, you need a requisite number of running backs to go through reps, whether it's individual drills, 7-on-7, 11-on-11, everything for training camp throughout the preseason. Because again, even though a lot of people aren't watching, if a tree falls in the forest, that running backs are getting carries in the second half of preseason games, whether each person is individually acknowledging that or not. So I think they're light at the position. So it almost feels like regardless of what they feel about Darrell Henderson, they need to add somebody. They have Xavier Jones. They have Jake Funk, who's a rookie. That's largely it. Raymond Calais. I mean, they are very light. I hearken them back to Atlanta, that they do not have the typical 1-2-3 rotation you could see. And other teams have 3 or 4 quality guys. So I always talk about the shuffle. Are they going to be able to get somebody's cast off that they just are not able to keep? But I don't think the Rams, what we see today on the depth chart, I don't think that's the subset that we see active on game day on week one. There's just too much time and too many reps, and something else could go awry on that depth chart as well.
Yeah, I mean, and we can go in a little bit here. Some of the potential candidates. I mean, Melvin Gordon's a name that's been bandied about. From my reading of it, I was looking at some of his contract stuff. He's got a $2 million roster bonus due the first day of camp. So I think if that's going to happen, it's going to happen this week. And the initial news out of the Rams camp is that they're not really in any level of urgency to do that. So that might be one. I think he might ultimately rule himself out based on his contractual stuff. So that'd be one that I'd potentially watch for. A couple of other names, we were talking about it in our staff chat today. Sony Michel, Ronald Jones are some interesting names. I think if you're looking for cast-offs from other teams.
Royce Freeman could be another one from Denver that just squeezed out because they actually gave Mike Boone a decent contract there in free agency, so he would be running back 4 if Gordon is going to stay, right?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I hadn't thought of. That's a really good one. But there's not many guys, and I don't think Gurley's going to happen. I think they kind of know, they basically paid Gurley not to play for them last year, and so. I don't know if that's something that's going to happen. You look at, and the other thing too is if you look at from Darrell Henderson, who's a threat to him, right? What's a realistic threat to him? And I know some of the debate is hey, he had the opportunity and didn't really run with it. I mean, not really, right? I mean,
they were running a committee. They had Malcolm Brown is a space eater on a depth chart, man. You don't want to see that guy as the running back 2-3 on the depth chart because he does everything well.
Correct. And we have, the interesting part about as I sort of look at Ronald, Darrell Henderson, you sort of look at the surrounding stuff. They had Gurley, then they draft Akers. At the same time, all that was going on, Malcolm Brown had a 2-year offer from Detroit as a restricted free agent that they matched, right? And so we know Detroit was interested. The Rams matched it, a multi-year deal. And then when that deal's up, he lands with Miami. So like the idea that he's just not good, I think like, let's give him a little bit of credit. Again, has Darrell Henderson been a world beater since he came into the NFL? No, but just to say that like, hey, it can't play, I think that's going a little bit too far. So, I'll be interested to see sort of where. Yeah.
Let's also rewind to this is the guy that with Gurley on that depth chart was a fringe or first rounder in many rookie drafts that season. So to say that he had no cachet and that he's a cast off, no. Let's go all the way back. And he was hot. He was the Michael Carter plus of that draft class, if I were to put a moniker on it. And Malcolm Brown, I always say, he's an Alfred Blue type. Like he's just a veteran thorn in people's sides that he's not flashy. He's not sexy. He doesn't run a 4.35 and he didn't have a super high pedigree, but guy can play. And sure enough, here he is in the league a lot longer than I think a lot of people are expecting. And I think what you're saying is, hey, look at the storyline. The takeaway maybe isn't the Rams don't like Darrell Henderson. Maybe the takeaway was they really like Malcolm Brown. And you're kind of alluding to that with a couple different checkpoints. And Miami thinks the same thing. This is a valuable member to a younger depth chart around him. Who knows? We may need him to be the 1A, 1B for a decent cross-section of the season.
Right. And something that you always come back to is if a team that doesn't have a need at running back or any position really, but running back in particular, if they don't have an overt need and they take someone in the second round, they probably had a top 20 grade on him. Right. I mean, isn't that what you would kind of infer from how the Rams selected Cam Akers? Right. That's something that you've said, and I think that really rings true as we sort of analyze the history of all of this. So that's I don't think the idea that they don't like Darrell Henderson and I don't think I wouldn't go that far. We don't have good enough proof of that to say that for sure. The other thing, people say, hey, he's injury prone. 2 high ankle sprains, like that's not really injury prone. Like that stuff happens. Right. So that'd be the other thing I would say.
I will say for someone that myself has ankle injuries, I would consider myself a little ankle injury prone. So that is a possibility that he's injury prone with his ankle, but that doesn't mean overarching. I mean, and this whole injury prone for a running back thing, it is dangerous job description. To it. he's running into brick walls like 10, 20, 30 times a week, whether it's in pass pro or with the ball in his hands. It's dangerous. So they know that going in, and to say that you are durable within that is probably folly. Well, this is Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 62 of the Footballguys Dynasty Show. Reminder for you to sign up for that Footballguys daily email update from Joe Bryant. It's footballguys.com/email. Things that came out over this past week, and again, things like Cam Akers, you're going to get an alert right away. Usually a lot of those significant injuries, a trade, if we find out, Deshaun Watson has been put on the NFL exempt list or, has been traded, anything like that, massive, that's a separate email. Joe is on top of that. And you're going to get that. And this is the time of year, again, training camp, preseason. You need to be on it. There's going to be first come, first serve waivers and things like that. Move the needle. Can you be first? Can you be early in reacting to some of this news? Things like Adrian Peterson. He's ready. He's waiting to sign, in shape. I have no doubt. He's probably the Terrell Owens of, being ready at his house and just waiting for that call, waiting for that 1A, 1B opportunity. Zach Ertz, a possible trade option. We've been hearing that for 3 months, but if he's actually dealt, you're going to hear about it on one of those Footballguys daily email updates or on an alert, the Bat channel. And then also notable, no extensions for Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin this past week. They're both going to play under that franchise tag. So they will be a part of that free agency class coming up next off season. So critical year for them in a prove it and get some guaranteed money in a few months here. And yeah, so what are you thinking in terms of the buy sell angle, like of these 4 options, which is buy Cam Akers, sell Cam Akers, buy and sell Darrell Henderson? Which one do you think is the most attractive right now from the early data points you've seen in the marketplace?
I mean, I think if you can get a first plus for Akers, I think it's probably a good idea. And it's just, I think it's liquidity, which I'm not sure you're going to have at any point with him going forward. That first is pretty marketable. I'm not sure how marketable Cam Akers is going to be coming off an Achilles injury. That'd be, I think, the initial salvo there. I mean, I'm of two minds on Henderson. One, I think like, hey, maybe he's not like, hey, like, this is a really good opportunity for him. You and I have been sort of skeptical on the skill side, on the cost side coming in. I think he's probably been better. He was better over expectation than Akers was last year. And if we sort of want to parse the stats, there's not a super compelling case that Akers was better than him last year. In fact, there's I think a compelling case that Henderson was better. So, I mean, we could sort of debate that. I wonder though if there's not going to be like it seems like the market almost instantaneously started tamping down Henderson, that like he can't be like an elite guy, more so than I thought would happen. So I'm going to be watching that, because I think if he's going to go for like seconds, I think all the time, like all of a sudden, people think like, hey, they're getting cute and they're going to like cash out for a second. You're actually going to catch a middle there where you can say, hey, you're actually buying what the person perceives to be high, but you're actually buying not at the peak. I think that's an interesting pivot play. The other thing too, like this is a really good trade arbitrage opportunity, because if there's a lot of movement,
make that up. You just made that term up.
Trade. Nope. This is
trade arbitrage.
Trade arbitrage or an arbitrade. An arbitrade is the other way I
all right, there you go.
Arbitrade. When there's a lot of movement on a player, right? You can be a buyer in one spot for cheap and a seller in another spot for more expensive. And then all of a sudden you're getting some extra,
it's a portfolio play. It's also a portfolio play. You can be a buyer in one spot, a seller in the other, a holder in others. And you can explore all that. And that's the thing I've explored in the hours leading up to our recording. And again, it's still fresh. It's the same day as Cam Akers' injury, is that I've explored selling Cam Akers. I've explored buying, and Henderson. I've offered both as well, with a couple of deals under my belt, both with Akers. But yeah, I think you have to kind of be in on the dynasty marketplace on every goal, because every single league is different. I've had some people say that Cam Akers isn't worth a roster spot, and I had one person that thought a first plus was an auto accept. I need to jump on that. So, and that just shows a wild variant of just, a microcosm of two leagues. So yeah, I think the Henderson, one thing I would point out, because you had pause about Cam Akers, and part of it was, and I wanted to clarify here, because now we have one of those answered, at least for the time being, is one of those is, they haven't used their running backs in the receiving game much. And, but was part of that, you figured Henderson's going to be involved. He's going to be in the mix. The clarity with one of them out, does that actually aid some of that question, or does that systematic limitation persist here?
I mean, I think there is room for running backs in the passing game here. I think that's something that Stafford's done more than Goff, for example. So that's one thing. And then I mean, if all of a sudden there's two guys that are in the relatively similar skill set, relatively similar ability, and now there's only one, and it's a tier break after that, which I think is where we sit right now with Darrell Henderson, and on July 20th, that helps Henderson, right? Because there's not an immediate competition, right? There's not, there's an X amount of touches, right? There's not two guys that are relatively close in terms of ability or skill set to address them. There's only one. Now, again, how do they address the rest of the position? I'd be surprised if Jake Funk or Xavier Williams was the backup running back. I'd be
seeing 10 touches a game. Yeah,
correct. I'd be surprised by that, but it's not. I wouldn't necessarily rule it out. And the other thing too is don't forget CJ Anderson was like big time stretch carries for them a couple years ago, and those stories are possible. And I don't think he's in play for them. He's retired and gone now, but they've had guys that have come from virtually nowhere and off the radar, completely off the fantasy radar, to being viable in that offense. So I wouldn't necessarily rule out someone either. I mean, and we've talked about some of the guys that I think could be potentially attractive around the league. I think Sony Michel's one, and Ronald Jones is another that I think are pretty interesting in terms of potential secondary landing spots.
Yeah, I'm most interested in a cast off from another NFL roster. And then the other one for me is Le'Veon Bell. I know he didn't have quite the impact a lot of people were thinking with the Chiefs last year, but
that's an understatement.
Compared to Gurley, who I don't think is coming back, yeah, basically just a hindrance to Clyde Edwards-Helaire in year one. But to our benefit, because coming at a discount, coming into maybe what is a juicy year two for him. But yeah, I think Le'Veon Bell has a little bit left. I think that would be an interesting signing. But for me, Adrian Peterson, I don't think Gurley's going back there. So that's really the one I'm watching. Or we've mentioned 3, 4, 5 names from the other teams. That's what I would be looking for. What I would say with Darrell Henderson is if you are exploring the market, now is the time, because if someone is signed, then that is going to, whether it impacts him in the season or not, that is going to have an impact on what you are able to extract. And it may turn him from being a sell for you because you're able to get more, and being a hold now, almost a disgruntled hold, because you were not active. So these pockets, I always remind people, this is your moment. This is your window of, hey, if you're going to spend 10 minutes sending some offers and passing back a couple counter offers, 25 offers around your league, this is the moment. It's on Seinfeld. This is the signal, Jerry, right here, the signal. So, this is really the action-oriented to-do list item right now. If you have 2 or 3 shares of Henderson or Akers or whatever across your leagues, now is the time to action plan that, because not a lot of waivers going on. You're not setting lineups. So spend a few minutes because otherwise, inactivity is still you making a decision.
Yeah.
Do want to remind you about the Football Guys mobile app. It's back for 2021. It's been redesigned, resculpted, custom projections, everything to dominate your waiver wire, trades, syncing your roster. It's available in the Apple and Google Play stores. Get it today. Sync to your phone. Beautiful design. And again, it's going to sync it with everything and save you a bunch of time on a weekly basis. Got some trades, and we didn't talk specifically, so I'll start out with a Darrell Henderson one here. FFPC super flex, and we've got Darrell Henderson straight up for a 22 first, which of course, especially in FFPC, is truly random.
Yeah, it's absolutely random. This feels fair. It feels it feels where the market should be at for him. Would I rather have the pick? Yeah, I think I'd rather have the
super flex is probably a key component, right?
Right.
Get that little bit of boost.
Yeah, and ultimately, I figure, there's probably other ways that I can, is there 4 or 5 guys that I can sort of piece together 1 week here, 2 weeks here, and roughly approximate Darrell Henderson? That's probably possible. I don't love to do that for multiple roster spots, but if I've got Darrell Henderson, like I can chip away him for a first and do it. And honestly, like if there becomes a situation later on, doesn't he basically have to perform at his ceiling for that to be worth it? Essentially, right? Yes. I mean, he has to, and I'm not saying that it's impossible, but
it's not super likely that he's going to get to January and be worth multiple firsts.
Right. But
it's not likely. Like he's to the point where I don't think he's going to have that dynasty market Zuzu that he's going to be up in that hierarchy. He feels like he already has a tempered ceiling, even if he has a quote unquote successful year.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: 3 options. 2022 leading running back in terms of touches for the Rams. You've got Darrell Henderson as one option. You got Cam Akers as the second option, and then you got somebody else.
Anybody else?
I know you got the field. Who do you take?
Well, field is a smart answer. I think the lowest probability is Cam Akers, because that would be just mind-blowingly historic if he actually not only came back to a relevant role, but as you said, leading the team. So that is you're talking about a July. It's not like it happened 4 months ago where you get a little bit of extended time. Don't put anything past him. Advancement in medical technologies. You never know. 12 months can feel like a decade with some procedures and recovery techniques and treatments. So, but yeah, I think I would go the field, Henderson, then Akers for touches just based on today. Now, Let's see who they bring in. I'm really interested in that. Let me my lead into this next trade. Oh, and also the thing I wanted to say was the FFPC Superflex means you got a few extra quarterbacks around the water cooler rostered. So that means even more churn at the running back position, more primary backups available on the waiver wire, which is why, you probably already had at least 2 running backs ahead of Henderson. So you're churning out running back 3+ for a first. And let's be fair, you're finding another current backup off the waiver wire, and you might be able to just do it again. So rinse and repeat. All right, here's my lead up question. Is CeeDee Lamb worth 4 first-round picks?
I'm gonna lean no there, Chad. I'm gonna lean
teeter-totter. No. Who weighs the most on the side of the teeter-totter? All right, well, here's the trade. You tell me if this is CeeDee Lamb for 4 first. CeeDee Lamb and a 1 quarterback for T. Higgins, Juju Smith-Schuster, 109 and 112. 4 first in my book.
What do you have to? What's he have to do to return that value?
Be as good as everyone projects that he's going to be. The Oracle.
By the way, we project him as I was looking this week, so this may have changed. I believe he's either 13 or 14. Him and Cooper were back to back. This trade in that prism is a catastrophe, right? That's horrible because
is CeeDee Lamb 3 firsts better than T. Higgins? Why does T. Higgins have a bunch of hate on him? Is what I would say.
Is he 3 firsts better than Juju Smith-Schuster?
All these points.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is he? Yeah. It's just, I mean, I don't. Putting your eggs in one basket at wide receiver is usually a bad bet. Is what
T. Higgins was kind of #good last year. Like people want to just throw him aside because they drafted Jamar Chase. There's a myriad of outcomes here. What if Jamar Chase isn't transformational? What if T. Higgins is just better? What if Joe Burrow is not, not a guy that's going to be an elevator of 2 to 3 wide receivers to top 15, top 20 status? I think this whole, Jamar Chase being in the top 24 year 1, careful. I think he's a really good prospect, but careful.
You mean the worst deep ball throwing quarterback in the NFL last year, Joe Burrow?
That's the guy. That's the guy. Yeah.
Okay.
That's him.
Right.
Yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster feels like, right now he's got a stink on him. He's had a stink for a little bit, but if he's, in that wide receiver 2-3 mix of that trio they have with Pittsburgh this year again, buy more shares because it's going to fall in season. He's the exact type you might be able to get off the scrap heap for some marginal Wayne Gallman 2 years ago. Like there's this little window of him being the starter, and all of a sudden you get Juju Smith-Schuster in return. The other guy turns into a bag of bones, in terms of his market value there. So yeah, this is a really good lesson. You're getting, it's right at the wide receiver position too. This isn't resculpting anything. And 9 and 12. Imagine flipping 9 for like a late second and a future first, flip 112 for a first. Right. And those could turn, this could turn into, it already is, but it could turn into a travesty. You might be able to get the running back 1 of some class over the next 2 years because you flipped out those firsts.
Yeah.
Whew, my goodness. All right. What do you think about
there? You flipped right out.
Yep. What do you think about FFPC Superflex, where we got Russell Wilson, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Tyler Higbee for Darren Waller and a first next year?
Wow.
How valuable is Darren Waller? I know he makes a massive difference when you start putting premiums, the position falls off. I get all that. But shedding Russell Wilson, if you're strong at quarterback, can I storyboard this where you like it dealing away Wilson?
Usually not. The problem with Wilson right now is I think he's underpriced. So if you're trading him away, you're trading away an underpriced player. I don't think you're getting what he's worth. So that would be the initial sort of thought that I have. There's a lot of, even if you sort of like, let's say they're equal, right? Let's just assume that for a second. Right. It becomes Smith-Schuster and Higbee for a first.
Right.
We just put a first on Juju 45 seconds ago in the last trade we talked about.
And Higbee has legit, top 10, top 12 outcomes here with Stafford added. And again, with no Cam Akers, this might be more of a pass-centric offense. I think that was one of the better Football Guys staff conversations we were having today, in the back door there, that if the run game isn't as central it was maybe planning with foundational Cam Akers there, that's good news for all of these ancillary targets, especially Tyler Higbee.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we got one more here. We got one more, and this is a 12-team Superflex. We got Laviska Shenault for T.Y. Hilton and a 23 first.
Oh, the first. Give me the. You said Superflex, right?
Oh, yeah.
Give me the first.
Okay. And that's independent. I mean, it sounds like you're almost saying that and you didn't even hear Hilton, and it doesn't even matter.
Listen, if you're not a difference-making elite wide receiver, you're
just take it first. Just take it first.
Take it first. And I think a lot. I keep looking at the market, and the same thing keeps happening. And it's something I got to dive into a little bit further. But I want to go back and look, because I think there's probably a trend of this happening. But every year, over the past 3 or 4 years or so, we've had a franchise quarterback for some way, shape, or form be very, very cheap. And whether that's Watson right now because this issue, or whether it was Rodgers last year because of some bad touchdown regression, or it was Dak 6 months ago or I guess 10 months ago now because of his injury, right? You just keep going back and back, and these stories have kept happening. Back to when Peyton Manning's neck, and all of these things. Brady was old, and 10 years ago, right? Like all of these things, and I just constantly look at these things and see the same pattern reappearing, and I want picks in my holster to be able to attack those, right? Because if you can get Watson right now for a trade that involves just future picks, and I mean that's a potential league altering trade, and Laviska Shenault might not necessarily hold the same value in that trade. So that's really how I'm looking through the lens of Superflex trades right now, especially with future first, because you've got so many different of these options. I mean, Russell Wilson could be that guy this year that you're just like, hey, he's undervalued, and something with non-core assets and a couple of picks gets a Russell Wilson deal done, and you look back in 5 years and be like, oh, that was a avalanche. That was just a killer of a trade. I mean, that's kind of how I look through the lens of these future first round picks now.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was a 2-quarterback league a year or two ago, and it was like I was able to just give up picks for Tom Brady, and it's like you look back at your results since, and you're like, well, I gave up picks, so Godspeed. Use the picks as you see fit, but good luck trying to sharpshoot out of Devy or rookie draft or whatever. A rookie class, a Tom Brady outcome, even over a 2-3 year sample. And I think that's the thing that we talk about all the time, sort of, in strategy sessions or with our own teams or whatever, just about the ability to sharpshoot outcomes of like is a rookie wide receiver coming in and really having a better career than Keenan Allen going forward? Like, that's a tough ask. I mean, you're talking like, even if that's just one top 12 season and 1 or 2 top 24 seasons, that is a really high-end outcome for having no NFL data points for an incoming rookie, whether that's Jamar Chase or anybody, saying, oh, you're going to post that, and be a guy that, frankly, could lead the NFL in targets, any singular year. I mean, that's a massive outcome for, and so people get wrapped up in the 21-year-old part. How about get wrapped up in the good part? Like whether you're 21 or 25 or 31, are you good? Get good. And then we can start having a big, 25 is way better than 30, years old. But the problem is there's too many 25-year-olds. We're not even sure if they're good, right?
Right.
Cortland Sutton, quick, is he good or not good?
That's a good question, Chad.
Dynasty-wise, exactly. So, but he's right in that middle zone, right? But he's young. He's way younger than some of these quote-unquote old guys. He's way younger than Michael Thomas. But we don't know if he's good.
Right.
That's the problem. Is Jerry Jeudy good? Is he good? Is he great? Or is he okay? Well, he's young. Thank goodness. He's young. So guess what? We have this whole long lens to figure out if he's good or not.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is you're sinking it in. You're like, all right, do I start him? Do you start that guy? Okay, he's okay. Well, okay, now is he any different than Michael Gallup in your lineup then? Like, what's the difference? Oh, I know the difference. He's 3x as expensive. That's the difference. Got it. He's double the cost of Adam Thielen, and he might not outscore him. Got it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's get to the quotes from the Footballguys Dynasty Forum this week. We're mixing it up. Got some good ones. I personally find it frustrating not having, quote unquote, a guy at quarterback. I don't like streaming or guessing between 2 to 3 mediocre or poor options.
I mean, if I could lock somebody in, that'd be really nice. But that's the position you can do it in, right? You can, and you look at just the guys that have come from nowhere, and that quarterback's I'm not going to say it's a solved position, but strategically you can kind of attack patterns that reappear, which is you just take the cheapest top 10 guy every year. I mean, you just take that guy. If we're talking start one, especially if it's any sort of deeper roster, just take that guy, or you can go out and, there's every year, we just look at
who's good and who didn't have a good year.
Asset. Right. Yeah.
It would be Phillip Rivers, and like every third year it was Eli Manning, and and it was Matthew Stafford a couple times. I think this year it's Matt Ryan has a stink on him. Kirk Cousins has a little bit of a stink. He's had a stink for a couple of years, but yeah, you just look at who can play and who's going at like QB 18 and like just these egregious prices. And when they say 2 to 3 mediocre poor options, I would also say, man, you get some playing home road splits. When you get to mid-season, you actually have some data points on matchups, on who stinks, on the back end of their defense, and whose own defense sucks. So all these things you can exploit. And yeah, you may not get it right week 1 or week 3 between 2 or 3 guys, but you start getting more data points, and when the games start mattering more, then again, that committee can absolutely work. And those are the cheap guys, like you mentioned. I mean, it can be expensive in a start one to get a Josh Allen or Mahomes or Prescott, or it may be cost prohibitive on a lot of rosters to actually dive in and get that true stud a guy, as they mentioned. If Antonio Gibson were in this draft, there would be a big 4 instead of a big 3. Was there a big 3? I was unaware.
I guess it's Harris.
It ends after Javonte Williams. Yeah, I guess. Even though Sermon went pretty much close to Williams. Okay. But what do you feel about superimposing Gibson into this class? And they were referencing as a prospect, not. I mean, it makes sense with the data point we already have, correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, with the data point you already have, I think there's a pretty good argument you take him first. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's him and Harris, I think, are pretty close in that debate.
Well, but it would be crushing over Williams for sure. I mean, like it would be like at minimum it would be the 2 first rounders and Gibson as a 3, and then there'd be some other tiering beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think the market. I think the market has ETN and Williams closer than you and I would. Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting. Like you sort of go back and look at this. Like if it wasn't Gibson, right? If the Gibson story happened to Dylan, or if the Gibson story happened to someone else, if it happened to Darrington Evans, right, where they come out from nowhere and everything goes their way, kind of like James Robinson last year. Everything just sort of breaks their way. And they play well. Like we could be having this conversation about a lot of guys, right? So I would just be sort of careful when you think about that. I do think Gibson's good, and I think that I'd be really interested to see what happens if he gets an expanded passing game role, because that's going to be really interesting.
Yep, they're one of the top high leverage opportunity backfields there. And if McKissick takes any step back, I thought it was interesting when it's like McKissick has put on weight and it said 198. Yeah. He put on, I think he was listed at 190 something. And now he's like, I really think it's important to play at 198. That's very specific, JD. Very specific.
Yeah.
Some people would use maybe 200 pounds as like a significant marker at running back, or 210. But no, 198 is right there.
I had to go to a physical recently, and my optimal weight was 198. That's what they. Oh, really? That's what that said on the measurements.
Are you 5'10" like JD McKissick?
I am not. I am not.
Okay.
I am
slightly
6'4",
taller.
and
slightly taller.
Little lankier. Right.
Yeah. I like acquiring Alexander Madison since you're a Dalvin Cook owner. It often gets overlooked that the value of a handcuff is higher to the team with the number one guy.
I think it's actually lower. What's the easiest way to get two starters, which is to have
two separate backfields?
Right. To have separate backfields. So that's the thing with me. I mean, I understand why people, and that's why I hate the term handcuff, because
you're handcuffing the upside of your team because you can only have one elite running back. And yet if you have Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray, you have the possibility for a point in time to have both of them as starters and producing at a high level.
Right. And what's the, you're looking for upside, right? You're looking for, what's that? That's the 8%.
You're looking to align it so you crush people in your flex. You can start 4 or 5 starting running backs if your lineup allows, or you have the flexibility to parlay that and trade that for maybe studs at other positions. Or Jordan mentioned earlier, that could be future picks, that could be injured players, whatever it is. But yeah, like the whole, I think you want the valuable backups. Now, if you have the starters, so be it. But like you were saying, spreading it out. I actually came up with this earlier this week of, I want to touch a lot of different backfields. I want to have, like, if that means I have 12 running backs and 10 different backfields or something like that, all the better, because that means every single week of the season, I got a chance. I got a chance to find the injury. Now, some of those guys are going to be current starters, but a lot of them could be running back 2s or 3s or just interesting players to obviously warrant a roster spot. But man, it sure makes, what's going to happen, so-and-so just tweaked a hammy, that all of a sudden that might be an extra flex that I'm rolling out next week that I wasn't this week. So I just want exposure. I think that would probably be it. I want more global exposure if I can. I'm not a fan of giving up a top 6 to 8 dynasty quarterback and not getting a quarterback in return.
I wonder if that's a super flex conversation.
Yes, it's a super flex conversation. I think it was relating to the Russell Wilson trade we kind of discussed earlier.
Yeah, there's only so many guys that I truly feel comfortable with, and I'm very selective at the quarterback position. So
you can't be that strong where literally that's excess, right? I mean, because if you're dealing that player, then you're keeping your third quarterback and they're becoming your second. I do like the arbitrage game. What did you call it? Arbitrade? I like the arbitrade.
Trade arbitrage.
Yeah, I mean, can you trade a guy that maybe is perceived at that level, but yet you're trading him for Watson, who is not, perceived to be in that zone right now, or, someone that's faded from grace because of a down year, injury, whatever, and you're getting something on top. So that is technically moving from, say, top 6 to 8 to something else, but you're really getting the profile of the same level player. They're just valued differently right now.
Right. Like if you were to say I just want to make this very specific because I think it's important. If we're talking top 8, and that includes Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, I'm fine. Some people clearly, I'm fine pivoting off of those. What I mean is, core guys who have hit multiple times. So we're talking, and even in that group, there's guys I don't necessarily love, but I'm talking Mahomes, I'm talking Wilson, I'm talking in no particular order, Dak, Lamar Jackson is one of those guys I have a little question about, Kyler Murray a little bit of question about, but Watson fits in that category. Stafford's pretty close to that category for me. Yeah. So you sort of look at those guys, and there's a couple others, but those are the guys that I really gravitate towards because there's a lot of safety there and there's a lot of upside. And when you sort of compare them against the guys who haven't done it, it's just the Grand Canyon in terms of historical expectations. So those patterns reappear, and I just want to make sure I'm on the right side of those.
What's the narrative on Russell Wilson? He has one season not in the top 12. One. Like, what are we like? Is it just overthinking?
It's so there's this great Darrell Morey, the GM for the 76ers, has this great line, and it's basically like, hey, we have a weighted number generator. Like, let's hit the button, see what numbers come out, and then just make up a narrative that sort of fits the numbers, right? And it's just that it's total bogus, right? Just because, like, hey, just the order of which this random stuff happens. It's that's what's going on with Russell Wilson. You know, if he spread out his season last year instead of going really well in the first half and really, you know, not good in the second half, right? We wouldn't really think much of the season. But because that's the recency bias in our brains, right? We're totally suckers for that. And so, you know, and I mean, touchdown regression happens. Like, it was the easiest thing in the world to see coming. I think he was at like a 14% touchdown rate last year. I'll give you a hint, Chad. That doesn't keep going. Like, that stuff regresses. And, you know, and that was like the splits between DK Metcalf. You know, that was the DK Metcalf's the greatest wide receiver to ever play the game week in terms of the dynasty narratives. You know, then he took a big step back. Why? Well, he stopped scoring as many touchdowns, right? The touchdown rate dropped. Then all of a sudden, like, he kind of regressed back towards what you would expect based on his targets. I mean, you know, if you sort of jumbled them up and you know, put them in a different order, those games, I think we'd be thinking about them totally different.
We got last one from the Shark Pool. How many years will it take to find another Darren Waller? He is a bigger difference maker at his position than Russell Wilson is at his, even in Superflex.
Yeah, there's I'm a fan of Darren Waller, especially if he versus Kittle. You know, and then we can sort of have a philosophical debate about how high you want Pitts to go and you know, and that sort of thing. But I'm a fan of Waller's production profile and of his ability to change your dynasty roster. He's probably going to have been retired for 3 or 4 years by the time Russell Wilson just exiting his prime. So that would sort of be the long game, sort of high end, really good profile there with Russell Wilson. That's, I don't like trading those guys away just because it's, you know, if Waller goes down with an Achilles like Cam Akers did, right? That trade almost goes to zero because that's going to be a lot harder to recover for at his age and all that stuff. Whereas if Russell Wilson goes down, like, he's probably going to come back because it's a much more forgiving position in terms of being able to play, you know, as you age. So for me, like, I'm really reticent to give away any sort of any of those really high end core quarterbacks, especially when I'm not getting one of them or a depressed version of them back.
If you're into shows like this, you're a serious fantasy player, and it's the time of year where you need those high-end smart resources at your disposal. Consistently winning is tough. It takes a lot of time. We've talked about that before, that the Football Guys premium subscription, paywall, everything that you get behind that, including the MyFootballGuys sync for all of your leagues. It aids the waiver wire and also makes those winning decisions with projections. They have the forward-looking projections that I would highlight, as well as my series of breakout candidates is coming up. It was just shouted out in the email today, but breakout wide receivers, running backs, tight ends for this coming year, as well as another one coming down the pipeline for me is league changing and league winning players. You know, those high variance plays that it really does come down to sometimes 5 or 10 players of who has those guys, the guys that came from down their positional depth charts in terms of draft cost. And all of a sudden now they're an auto start player. You don't want to be in a matchup against them. And it's all about identifying those players. And this is really the hot zone, the red zone here for Football Guys leading up to week 1. So you get inside with the premium subscription. Just join now. And again, if you sign up for that daily email, you're going to see all the content, all the links to articles that are going to be available to you through training camp, through the preseason, and of course, during the valuable regular season. So save time, get the edge, and go sign up at footballguys.com. All right, Jordan, busy show. And we talked a lot about trading. I thought the conceptual arguments, arbitrade is a new term we came up with this week, but Russell Wilson, Superflex, the value of core players. Again, arbitrade with CD Lamb. We talked a lot, of course, about Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson, the liquidity and the stability, frankly, of future picks, getting those free roster spots, as well as flexibility to make any trade you like in the future. So for Jordan McNamara, myself, Chad Parsons, and until next time, good luck in your dynasty leagues.